Hi, I'm Hitz, author of the Big Sky Terror series. So this is a chapter 1 from book number 2, Judith's Blood, which releases on November 2nd. I hope you like the reading, and if you do like it, I hope you will go check it out. So in this chapter, we meet a new character. His name is Sean. He was not in the last book, and this is an introduction for him so we can kind of get an idea of who Sean is and get a little glimpse into what his role in this new story might be. I hope you like it. Chapter 1, Sea Spray. Virginia Beach, Virginia. Clouds consumed the night sky, their bellies softly aglow in city lights. A bitter breeze carried the beach's damp, salty air into the park. The cold had forced the homeless under walkway bridges and sent passers-by scurrying that much faster to their office Christmas parties and last-minute shopping. They tightened their coats and wrapped their scarves, and Sean stepped into the park. He strolled with no hurry in mind. His ragged overcoat flapped with the wind, forcing him to cinch it repeatedly with each blow. He tugged his wool cap down over his black hair and mahogany ears. His tattered gloves slipped, tilting the hat off-center. He rubbed his gray-bearded cheeks, then jabbed his hands into his overcoat pockets, where he could wrap the garment tightly around his tall, athletic frame. "Holy shit, this is cold," Sean huffed, closing in on his target. The wind paused and his body odor fluttered past his nose. It overpowered the smells of sea-salted air and his beard's perfume of dried whiskey. He held back a grimace. This is how I should smell, after all. Sean reached the bench and stretched out his hand. He missed the armrest, slipped and tumbled onto the ground. His grip wobbled as he pulled himself up onto the black metal seat and rolled onto his back. He curled up inside his overcoat. Really sell it. Make them see it. He waited. Shivering, he rocked left and right. Where are they? He waited longer. 30 minutes passed before anyone came. Two paused at Sean's back. Their feet clopped and slid like a couple. Heavy step, light step. A man and a woman? "How about this one?" the man said in a flat, hoarse voice. "He looks a good size," the woman said. "Excuse me." The man shook Sean from the shoulder. "Sir." Sean grumbled, rocking his head. Acted up good. Drunk. Careless. He set his head back down. The man rattled Sean's shoulder again. "Sir? Please wake up, sir." "Huh?" Sean turned. Blinking hard and deliberately, he focused on the middle-aged man's gaunt face. "What?" "Dear sir," the woman said. Her face was chiseled thin as well. "Come with us. Let us get you out of the cold." "What?" Sean said. "Are you from the shelter?" "Yes," the gaunt man said. "Come this way." He motioned toward the parking lot. Sean stood. "It is pretty cold tonight." He took a step toward the sparse parking area. "It is," the woman urged him forward. Sean nodded and stumbled on. The couple followed just behind him. Every few steps, their hard soles clicked against the pavement in unison. Sean's feet slid across the ground, scraping along the cement. He reached the edge of the parking lot and paused. "Where's the shelter van?" "Over there, sir," the woman said. She pointed to the solid white cargo van 3 spaces to the right. "The other van is in the shop." "Oh." Sean approached the indistinct vehicle. As he stepped to the van's side door, his gaunt host slid in front of him, grabbing the handle. "Let me," the man said. He jerked the handle back and slid the door open. From inside the vehicle, the scent of bleach wafted over the air. The inner walls shone metallic white. The floor sparkled from black rubber matting. There were no seats. The windows were sealed, blocked by black metal grating. A similar cage separated the front seats from the cargo space. "But," Sean said, "there's nowhere to sit." Stone hands grabbed his sides, hoisted him up, and tossed him into the rear of the vehicle. He banged his head into the interior wall and saw white spots floating in the gloom of the van. The door slammed shut behind him. "Hey!" Sean felt the doors. There were no handles on the inside. The couple climbed into the front seats. "Let me out of here," Sean said. "Relax," the woman told him from the passenger seat. "Everything's fine. We'll be at the shelter soon." "Fuck you," Sean said. "Let me the fuck out of here." He threw his hands against the cage, separating him from the front. He banged and rattled the metal, shaking the van. The woman turned away. She inhaled and swung her face toward Sean, stopping an inch from the metal grate. Her jaw hung low, exposing a row of fangs behind her lips. Ivory daggers enclosed her tongue. Her eyes glinted red, firm, and focused on Sean's. Sean jumped backward. He shuffled like a furious crab to the rear of the van. What the fuck? The vampire looked forward. As the vehicle started, she returned her gaze to Sean, her face now human. Relax, friend. In fact, look in the bag next to you. It should help settle your nerves on the way to the shelter. To his left, Sean felt a cloth bag containing a hard object. I know what this is. Opening the bag, he found a metal flask. Keep it going, Sean thought. Let's see where this goes. As the vehicle rolled, Sean unscrewed the flask's cap. He sniffed its mouth, then once more traded glances with the vampire. Rot-cut vodka. Not on my worst day. He leaned against the rear door and flipped the flask back. He sucked in air as if his mouth burned and scooted himself into a shrunken cower in the rear corner. The woman nodded with an approving smirk and looked forward. Sean listened to passing traffic, felt the textures of the road below. The windows shielded the inside from the out. As he tried to peek through, he discovered they weren't just tinted, they were painted black. Where are we going? He stilled his twitching foot and checked that his hosts were still focused ahead. They passed under street lamps, light pulsing through the van. The ground smoothed and the vehicle slowed and turned. Sean saw the roof of a building, the top of a garage door, then a tall industrial ceiling. The engine stopped and the driver and passenger removed themselves from the van, leaving Sean alone in the dark. Muffled voices issued from beyond the vehicle. Sean flipped his coat open and dug underneath his layers of flannel insulation. As the side door slid open, he remained still. A 20-something man with black hair leaned into view. He placed his eyes on Sean and said in a high, encouraging tone, "Come on now. Let's get cleaned up for dinner." Sean sat like a statue. The man leaned deeper inside, his torso hovering beyond the threshold. He placed a hand on the black floor and tilted his gaze. "Come on now, fella. We won't hurt you." Sean stared through the man's false visage. "I know who you are." Outside the van, a murmur grew. The black-haired man's face hardened. He squinted. "Okay, then." The man closed his eyes, then slowly reopened them, and they were glowing red. His mouth spread, sliding dozens of fangs into view. As he turned and reached toward Sean, black bloody claws sprouted from below his fingernails. Sean remained motionless as claw-tipped fingers approached his leg. He watched the hand grow closer, with its fanged head in tow. "Wait," Sean said calmly, as the hand hovered over his ankle. The black-haired vampire gazed up as Sean swung his right hand from under his flannel. Sean curled forward, jabbing his 9mm pistol into the monster's temple and squeezed. Pop! An explosion of mist and brain and bone spattered the shiny white wall. The vampire's limp body slumped to the driver's side. Sticky black clumps oozed onto the rubber mat. Sean swung his pistol toward the open door. Who's coming? Who wants to play? The hissing fanged face of the female passenger jumped into view. She turned to the back of the van. Pop! The woman stutter-stepped backward, pivoting against the side of the van. Droplets of blood sparkled in the darkness, clinging to the back of the passenger seat. Her body slumped to the ground, and a thin stream of vampire blood trickled from the center of her forehead. Sean focused on the opening. "Come on," he whispered, heart thumping so loudly he could barely hear his own words. Murmurs and chatter resumed beyond the van's white walls. Clunk! The rear door holding Sean's weight was sucked from behind him. He tumbled from the van, slamming his back into the concrete floor. His gun slipped out of his hand. "Ow," Sean said. "Shit." He felt for his gun and couldn't find it. 5 fanged faces stared down at him. A red-headed man and the driver squatted, spreading their clawed hands towards him. The driver's forehead shattered like an egg. A distant pop rang through the cold night air. He wobbled and fell. "Thank God she's out there," Sean thought. The left half of the redhead's face exploded. Pop! His body collapsed forward, flopping atop Sean and pinning his arm. The tallest of the vampires growled and screamed until his face burst like a water balloon. Another distant pop. Blood and cartilage expelled over Sean and the redhead's corpse. The next vampire in line turned to look through the garage door. His head exploded too. Pop! The last vampire turned. his eyes frantic for escape. His face erupted into a crater gushing like a burst bag of motor oil. Pop! He slid like a rag doll, falling over his friends. Sean groaned as he wiggled and shoved bodies out of his way. He found his feet and offered a smile at a pair of approaching headlights. A late-model VW Jetta stopped 20 feet from Sean and the neighboring pile of corpses. The door opened and Teresa stepped out of the driver's seat. She propped her rifle up on the car door and scanned the inside of the warehouse. Dylan emerged from the passenger side and fell back to the garage door. "Thanks," Sean said, pulling himself erect and shaking off the feeling of being prey. "Uh-huh," Teresa said. Sean walked to the Jetta and popped the trunk open. A second later, he headed back to his body pile, swinging a machete in his right hand. "You want to help me with this?" Sean said. "I think you got it," Teresa said. She loved to shoot, but wasn't a fan of the dirty work. Her eyes were fixed in the distance, away from the close-up carnage. "Dylan?" Sean said. Dylan turned to Sean. He flashed half a toothy grin and pivoted back to the outside. "Just thought I'd ask," Sean said. He knelt and lined up his blade under one of the corpse's jaws. Teresa looked at Sean from the corner of her eye, then glanced away quickly. "I'm going to walk the perimeter. Make sure we're alone." She set her rifle on the back seat and drew her pistol. "Okay," Sean said, forcing his blade through the vampire's flesh. The rough tread on Teresa's boots became quieter as she strutted further into the building. Dylan spotted Teresa's trip and sprinted to catch up. Sean moved to the next body. I guess someone has to do the dirty work. He grabbed the next corpse by its bloody hair. 1, 2, 3 heads severed. When Sean heard the silence break with the sound of Teresa's voice, she shrieked from the far side of the warehouse. "Teresa!" Sean surged to his feet and ran. Gunshots lit the distance like flashes of lightning. A group of beings scrambled toward Teresa and Dylan. They were too fast and too many to count. The hunters backed away and fired again and again. "What the fuck?" Dylan yelled above his outpouring of shots. Dylan's pistol locked back, empty. Then Teresa's. "Run," Sean said. He fired between his two friends into the crowd. Teresa swiveled and ran toward Sean. Dylan turned while dropping a magazine. He took a step and capsized as claws sunk into his leg. He screamed. Sean placed 2 rounds into the beast holding Dylan. Its face gushed and its claws went limp. Dylan stood. He took a step toward Sean, and the creature's fangs converged on his left bicep. It wrapped its arms around his waist, hooked its claws into Dylan's chest, and he howled. The bloodsucker drew its arms downward. Dylan's jacket split into strips, exposing sliced flesh and streaming blood. Sean fired at the monster, bursting its eye in the back of his head. Another attached to Dylan's right, another on his leg, and yet another on his ankle. Sean sighed, then aimed his pistol at his friend's forehead. Dylan's gaze met Sean's. He trembled as he mouthed the silent prayer. His face fell silent as a bullet tunneled through his head. Sean cried out. His blood boiled. He turned and ran toward the Jetta. Teresa sat in the driver's seat and flung the vehicle to the left, aiming the passenger door at Sean. "Fuck, fuck, fuck," Sean said. He frantically sprinted to the car and dove inside. Teresa squealed through the parking lot and onto the road, while the passenger door flapped with each bump. She refused to slow down. She threw the VW around curves and down the city streets, through the lights green and red. As they crossed under the interstate, she pulled off the road and slammed the vehicle to a stop. "What?" Teresa cried. She clenched the steering wheel in both hands, stared forward, gasped, and panted. A small white and red paper blew in the wind. It hovered above the pavement, tapping down every few feet with its corners before lifting into flight. It danced across the road and fluttered off into the night as Teresa's eyes burned, peering into the dark. Sean sighed. He placed his hand over Teresa's. Rolling thunder vibrated through the vehicle. In the distant sky, light flashed, illuminating a large swath of clouds. Teresa's phone lit up and vibrated in the cup holder between them. The screen read, "New message from Jay." Thank you for listening to this live reading. Again, my name is D.W. Hitz, author of the Big Sky Terror series. This was Chapter 1 from Judith's Blood, which is released on November 2nd. And if you like this reading, I hope you will go check it out. Links will be in the description. Feel free to also follow this channel and follow me on Twitter for more updates and news about the Big Sky Terror series, as well as regular writing content. I hope you have a great day. Thanks a lot.